is hosted by Tony Gapperstone. Thanks for tuning in. It's showtime.
What is up? It is showtime, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the BraveMaker show. If you're watching us live or listening on the replay, my name is Tony Gapperstone, and this is the 206th episode. I have to sometimes go back and check to make sure that I know exactly what episode we are on, and sometimes I have to just go, what? We've done over 200 episodes now. So cool. So thank you for being on this journey with us. We have been doing this for 5 years since we started BraveMaker, over 200 episodes. And every week we get to talk to a filmmaker who is making movies and telling stories. And we're excited for the special guest today. Before I do, I like to do an inclusive description for those of you out there. I'm a Caucasian man wearing yellow glasses, brown hair today. I've got a yellowish shirt. And I'm in the BraveMaker studio with big pink letters that say BraveMaker in front of a faux green wall and black and white striped paint on the wall next to me. I am a writer and director, and I live in Redwood City, California. I am acting as well, and I just absolutely love this work that I'm doing. So without further ado, I'm going to bring out our 206th guest. Her name is Ron Lee. Ron is a filmmaker who just premiered her very first feature film called Death Do Us Part. Till Death Do Us Part. Sorry. Till Love Do Us Part. Till Love Do Us Part. Till Love Do Us Part. I love that title, even though I just got it wrong. Till Love Do Us Part is a feature film directed by Ron and premiered at the Warsaw Film Festival as well as CineQuest. Ron is currently in Beijing and is here with us today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, why don't you give your visual description, Ron, so people can know what you look like. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for having me. And I am currently now in Beijing, but the previous 2 weeks I was at CineQuest, and because I had my feature film Till Love Do Us Part, we had the US premiere there, and we actually ended up winning a jury award for best feature film. So yeah, I'm glad to be here and talking to you about the film. I am a filmmaker, writer, director, and screenwriter. And also sometimes I do my own producer. I could be my own producer. I'm based in Beijing, and but sometimes I work also in Europe.
So cool. So I am very impressed. I got to watch your feature film through a screener. I did not see it at CineQuest, but we were in the same room. I saw you across the way taking photos on the set and repeat. And then I saw you in the CineQuest promotional media. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to connect with Ron before she goes back to Beijing. And then we did over email. So that's super cool. First of all, let's hear, kind of how you got in to filmmaking. We kind of like to ask, what's your origin story as a filmmaker?
Thank you for asking this question. Actually, I changed my path. I had a major career path when I was 26. I was a law school student. I finished my law degree in China as a bachelor degree, and then I went to Europe for a master degree. And during that time I was in Europe, I started to see, the other side of the life, the other side of the coin. I've always been a massive film fan, but I never really thought of making films, because to me at that time, making film is something completely different. It's like I remember I was talking to my mom and dad in high school. I said that I wanted to be a filmmaker, but my mom said that if you like driving, you don't need to be making the car. This is the entertainment for everybody. Maybe not everybody maybe wants to be a filmmaker, but you need to have a job and stuff like that. So I took their advice, which was nice because I got to meet very people from various backgrounds in my university. But then when I was in Europe, I was studying law in Amsterdam, and I noticed that the people around me, they all try different things, either music or writing, or film, videos. So then I started to think maybe, I should give it a try. And I started making some documentary short because that's easy. I didn't get myself into a film school. I just watched YouTube and how to edit, how to set up the camera, how to set up the white balance, the simple stuff. And I remember like I made like 3 short short documentaries in like 1 year, and then I remember 2 of them. They went to pretty good film festivals. So then I thought to myself, okay, not only like I have passion for film, maybe I also have some talent. So that's when I convinced my parents. I say that I wanted to study fiction filmmaking, and then I enrolled myself in Prague Film School, which is in Czech Republic. And yeah, I graduated with my first fiction short, which won to like over 60 film festivals globally. So that's sort of that was the foundation of me starting to make this feature film.
Amazing. So you've been kind of all over the place. To hear you started in law is pretty significant. And, did you feel there was some resistance in the creative pursuits that you had because of logic in any way? Like sometimes the creative life and the creative career can often be challenging because it's not an easy path to take. And sometimes it's easier to go into something that might be like law, more stable. What was the process like, and how was the parental support for you in that time? It sounds like you had it.
Yeah. My parents, they were always supporting me emotionally, but they respect my decision. But they were like just observing, if I remember after I made my first fiction short, that one that later went to a lot of festivals, and then I invited them to the Chinese premiere in a very good festival, and I won some award. And my parents was like, "Wow, this is, you actually did it. There could be a future to you, as a filmmaker." But I would say that like your channel is called BraveMaker. I think it's such a good name because it does, it takes a lot of courage to not only just switch in career, but also just be a filmmaker in this day and age. Like especially being a director, you have to create your own job opportunities. You have to initiate things. Basically, you're the core of every project, and you cannot take 10 projects a year like a cinematographer. So that really like challenges a person a lot when it comes to patience, when it comes to like working under extreme pressure. So yeah, I would say that compared to law career, of course, being a lawyer wasn't easy. I was a lawyer, for like 1 and 2 years, but I would say that path is more predictable. I mean, of course, nothing is predictable. The only thing that doesn't change in life is change, itself. So, but with that being said, making film, like in the film business, everything is possible, and I think it's just about how much you can open yourself, how much you think it's possible, and then you will make it happen. But with the law career, I would say that with like the proper education, with the proper experience, you will be somewhere and you will reach that stable status. Yeah, but with filmmaking, every time you make a film, it feels like you start from the very beginning. Yeah, so that's actually challenging and very it's thrilling. Yeah.
Filmmakers tend to be thrill seekers. I think we like living on the edge. We like taking some risks. I definitely identify with that. Not that law is boring. I'm sure that there's excitement in there, but it seems like you choosing this path and being a storyteller is sort of, it's like we often hear this: betting on yourself, believing in yourself enough to go after it because it's within you. It's something that you must follow, because if you don't, I often say, if I'm not filming, if I'm not writing and directing, if I kind of ignore that, it feels like within me, my bones are on fire. I feel sick. I feel something's off and not right in my soul, and I think that's the cool part of being a creative is it's not the same path for everyone, and it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's just always different. I love that part of the life.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I think you made a very good point. I just realized today because I like my lifestyle to be changing all the time. I like to go to different places. I like to travel. Like this year to Cinecross is my fourth time outside of the country, which was very
Wow.
unusual, you know. So I think, yeah, definitely. Also, making film is a communication for me. I think my starting point of trying to be a filmmaker was also because that I couldn't do anything else to express myself. You know, I'm not good at composing. I cannot write a poem. I cannot write a novel. So I thought, you know, filmmaking is my way out. And a good part about making a film as a media to communicate is you don't need to know your audience. You know, it's not like person to person communication, but it's very profound because you showed your film in festivals. You must know that when audiences from all over the world, they told you how they respond to the film, and that was the most satisfying feeling in the world. They may not agree with you, but just to hear their different thoughts, and then that you made the signal, and then they receive it and you get the feedback, and that was, I think, the most beautiful thing.
So good. Okay, so we need to jump in and talk about your film, Till Love Do Us Part. And I think there's interesting parallels in your expression or exploring of the concept of change, because you talk a lot about change just right now as a human. I'm like, oh yeah, your film deals with that a lot. In fact, you have that right in the dialogue of your characters talking about change. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show the trailer, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So if you are watching or if you're listening, here is the trailer for Till Love Do Us Part.
有一个著名的理论叫，如果什么都是规划，那么规划什么也不是。
这个婚姻呢，就叫生意。
那你现在副教授了吧？
讲师。
做大学老师既体面又稳定。
中间玩手机那位男生，知道我们在上哪门课吧？
城市规划。
人生的剧本每时每刻都在翻转，即便你选择静止，你又被动接受变化。当然，你也可以创造变化。
哎，女生，Hello， 棒，可以，Bye。
Are you coming for the back?
No.
Surprise！ 回到柏林导一个戏，你可以来找我。
我在这边挺好的，就是一个人有点不习惯。
1分钱不花，你就想娶我养了20多年的宝贝女儿？你做梦！
就是这么人，谁啊？这种事情我们做不到。
我等我想明白，跟他上床有激情。是这么办的吗？是这样。如果你想要的爱是那样，我没有。
Okay, so this film you wrote and directed, and we've got a real, and I'd love to have you kind of share, but it's a real complex story of love and finding yourself and expressing creatively, like finding connection with people and maybe not compromising your deepest hopes for life. It has a little bit of like, there's some it's beautifully shot. It has some real hard to watch scenes, also beautiful acting by your cast, like really well done on the casting. So let's hear from your perspective, like where did this story come from? it's something you wrote and directed. So I'm assuming there's some personal tie-ins. But yeah, please share what Till Love Do Us Part is all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for liking the film. I know that you're an actor yourself, so like hearing from you that you like the performance, you like the cast, it means a lot to me. Yeah, I do believe that all the relatable stories come from personal experiences. So yes, I as I said, I was a law school student, and when I got the opportunity to study in Amsterdam, I got the chance to sort of expand my horizons and revisit my life goals and objectives. So during my years in Europe, I can feel, how like people in China wish they'd had the same opportunity. So the film, I would say the plot, takes place in China and Europe. That sort of reflect the transformation of the lead, the female lead. Her outlook on life and on love. It's also about like different values and perspectives, Western and Eastern, and also I think the core question is what love is, and the never-ending journey of finding who we are and what we want and what we need. So I think that's a pretty common subject. But I think what's different about this film is, this is a female lead. She is a woman who seems to have it all. So that's a dangerous proposition, in China's context. In Chinese context, it's like somebody who already have it all, and why would she want to change? So that's a very uncommon thing for a woman to do. But because this woman, I think the unique feature about her is she is brave. Although in the beginning she was really this humble university lecturer, who wants to, follow the path that she has chosen. Yeah, so I think I got, sometimes mixed reviews from Western audiences and Chinese audiences. Still up until today, when I do some like screenings in China, people ask me the question about why did she do that? Because this film is not like a happy, like it's not like a film with very big happy ending. So sometimes people think, is the struggle, is the struggle worth it? But in Europe or in the US, I got comment. They say that they really think that the protagonist, she's very brave, and yeah. So I think I like this type of discussion, and it definitely brought a lot of different perspectives of different people from all over the world.
Sorry, I was muted there. The character's name is Shu, right? Your protagonist?
Yeah.
And she's married to, even the way that the film kind of opens and we see, the sort of perfect life, making breakfast for the husband, and the husband's going off to work with this important job. He's a banker, right? But you do this really cool thing, like the first scene where they go to the wedding. I watched that scene twice. I also teach acting. Was it so maybe you could explain a little bit more, because there's a lot of cultural things, Chinese cultural things that are happening. But the scene where the families are fighting at the wedding, I was like, that scene was so good, and it was almost like I wanted to show it to my acting class and give them some exercises around doing that. But you put that in the very front, like even in the first maybe 5 minutes, I think. And I was like, oh, it felt like it was foreshadowing her journey and her inner wrestle about her place. And then you see that kind of unfold in a beautiful but tragic way. And so I like that you were like, the movie isn't a happy ending. It could be considered tragedy, and maybe even a warning if you don't take care of your desires in the beginning of your life, you feel trapped like a little rat, and then all this conflict happens. So anyways, could you speak on that? Can you speak on writing that scene and filming it? And I have so many other questions about how many days you filmed, because it was like there were so many scenes and so many locations. I was like, this does not feel like a small independent film. So let's talk about that. First of all, the scene at the wedding. Describe.
Yeah, the wedding. Okay. Yeah, I think the reason I wrote this scene first, although this wedding is not the protagonist's wedding, but it's their friend's wedding. But that's basically showcase what marriage means in Chinese society. Marriage in China like involves not only a union between two people, but also like a union between two families. And in the nation, like showing off is part of the game. And it's always the parents who work hard to buy a house if they have a son, so they can get married, have a like very big wedding. So yeah, and the women have to marry when they're relatively young, so they won't get criticized by the society. And often, marriage are built on a financial stability over love. So, or we just have different understanding of what love is. In China, most Chinese people believe that love and happiness, thrive on financial confidence and stability, and that sometimes make a lot of sense because it's a global thing. So this is one of the subject I want to talk about. It's like what love is. So about this big wedding scene, when the parents, the two families, they're arguing in the heated argument and they started to fight. And that's actually a news I read from a Chinese news, like two couples, they already had this wedding, but they're like right before the ending, before the beginning of the wedding, they find out that there's a disagreement on, money issue. Because every time you go to a wedding, the friends will give you like a red package filled with money, as a gift. Like I know that probably in the US, you don't do that, but in our society, it's the most easy way to contribute, to your friend, to show that you care. But the two families, they have a different sort of agenda of who should keep the money. Yeah, that's not something fictional. That's what I read in news. That actually, like, very often, like two families got into argument or fight over like the financial, arrangement. And when I shot this scene, because the entire film, what you mentioned, yeah, it looks like it has a lot of location, which was true, but the whole film was shot right like in the pandemic, so that extra pressure to it. It was shot in, I think, 2020. Yeah, it was shot in 2020, and first, like, China got into COVID, and then we sorted that out. And then when we started to move to Europe, the whole pandemic started to thrive all of a sudden. Like, I remember in Czech Republic, every day, at the peak of it, every day is 15,000 people, getting COVID. And once we find anybody like in our key cast and crew who had it, we have to shut down for 14 days. But luckily that didn't happen. For the shooting, I would say that for example, the wedding scene, what I have when it comes to casting is I really need everybody to come to the audition. And almost never, unless I know somebody who I already worked with that person. Otherwise, I would always arrange casting, even for let's say extras, like extras with lines, with the dialogues. I always do that. So those people I picked, because during the pandemic there are not that many actors, in one city. So what we did is we just sort of find people from everywhere. Like I think half, maybe even like 1/3 of the people playing in the wedding scene, acting as parents, they're my crew member. They're my gaffer and stuff like that. But the main people who have dialogues, I definitely rehearsed it. And with the casting process, I believe, I like it, the performance to be very spontaneous, very realistic. But that doesn't mean that I don't do rehearsals, because on set everything gets so chaotic, and you sometimes as a director don't have all the energy to focus on the actor. So that's why for me, once we start shooting, every day is very precious. And I try to log a lot of the things during the rehearsal. And yeah, when it comes to shooting, I think in China we shot like 15-ish days, 15, and in Europe we shot 20. So
okay, wow.
the amount of time, because in CineQuest, I watched the film. They were shot in 5 days of feature film, and that was also during pandemic, and then they have like extreme limitations. But from the very beginning, I want this film to be shot in a proper way, relatively speaking, because I don't make like one film a year. I spend like several years making one film, so I wanted to make sure that we have the time we need.
That's really cool. Now I'm interested in the film. So Shu leaves her husband to go take this job abroad for some time, and then she meets Fan. Fan? Is that right? Fan. And he is this, kind of reckless, creative. He's very elusive and out there. He's doing these experimental plays, on a beach, and he's doing these fun, exercises with his actors. And he talks about getting governmental funding. I was wondering about your putting that in there. Is that, something that you have benefited from, as an artist? Have you found funding coming from those creative ways? And then you also see people who are a little skeptical of that or judgy of that. Can you talk about that thematic that you're playing with that character in the film?
Yeah. Fan is the character that's the male protagonist of the film, and she was the talented theater director and also actor. And Shu, the protagonist, who was a college lecturer, married to a very successful banker. The first time she met an artist type probably is just this time, and she was immediately drawn into this type of lifestyle. But the contract it's on pretty early on, because the financial stabilities versus the freedom of creative path. Those two doesn't really combine together. You can never have both. Let's say in most cases. With this character, because I was studying in Prague School, I also met some people from the theater scene, because I used to, when I was in university studying law, I was a key member of our drama group. So I did a lot of stage directing back then. So I was very interested in the drama scene, in the theater scene. And this fan was inspired by somebody I actually knew back in 2015, 16. And he was living this very free lifestyle. He studied computer science at university. So he is an IT guy, but what he really wanted to is do theater, and he went to the theater school. And I actually worked with him on a project. I did the sort of behind the scenes short film for one of his performance, and I just asked him how he got this funding. And then for theater, I think it's even harder for them to get investors compared to film. But for me, honestly, I had no luck so far getting any kind of government funding. So, but I'm not skeptical. I knew why, because in China we don't have government funding for film. Let's say for writer director, this type of film. But in Europe, that's probably one of the only ways you can get yourself funded. And there's so many directors in Europe that they're from European Union when I was this outsider. So for my film, like this one, Till a Police Party, we tried to apply for, the European Film Fund of different countries, but, we didn't really get them. And also those fundings, it takes time. Sometimes it takes 3 to 4 years, to get all the money you needed. And for me, that was, not very realistic. But for all the artists in Europe, I know Europe, they're very generous when it comes to funding to support artists. But their funding, I would say you can never make a living out of it. It's only covering the cost of the production. So you always have to find a way to, make a living. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. And I think, the conversation between Shu and Fan and the other Chinese couple, this 4 people dinner scene, and that's the conversation that actually happened to a lot of us. Maybe not in exact direct way, but that's the comparison never stops. like this time I went to CineQuest, because CineQuest, is in San Jose. It's very close to Silicon Valley, and my university classmate, my university was one of the top universities in China, and we have a lot of people who are a lot of people. They're in Silicon Valley working for Google, working for Facebook, and working for Samsung, and they actually we met up 10 years. Like I haven't seen them for 10 years. I met up with them, and I can see their lifestyle. They're definitely more at ease financially compared to me, and more stable. And but I actually invited two of them to come to my screening, and I remember one of them, after the screening, he says that, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm the guy who's doing this boring job." But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's happy and satisfied.
So I'll call out and invite more Silicon Valley people to invest in film. We need you. Donate, support artists. You have so many awesome opportunities to make the world better through art and film. And here's where I, no judgment, but here's where I'm often like wide-eyed about how many millions of dollars go into startups and creating apps that go away within a year or sometimes even less. And then art can last forever. And I just want more support for the arts. That's just something I was resonating so much with, that journey of fan, because I feel that it's really hard to do this as a living, and I have to have multiple other things happening, and I run a nonprofit that really relies on generosity. So it is a wild game. And so if you're a filmmaker and artist out there, keep going. It's worth it. Find a way, make a way. We often say in BraveMaker, you got to brave your way to do it. So that said, Ron, there's so many other things in the film I wanted to ask you about. Again, acting was so intense at times, and deep and emotional. I wondered if you had any stories from set about directing the actors. There's, did you have an intimacy coordinator, for the sexual, what's the word? Not the simulations, the sex simulation. Talk about, dealing with those kind of delicate relationships and interactions with the actors, if you would.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question, because this is something I really want to communicate with the filmmakers and audiences. I think sometimes people ask me what does a director do? You have the cinematographer, sometimes you have a screenwriter, you have your production designer. What do you do on set precisely? And I would say that my job is to guide and direct actors, and that's my biggest forte. I would say my strength. As I mentioned that for casting, I insisted on auditioning everybody, and once I find that person really it has a potential, and then we will move into the second round, and then finally I made a decision on those three. So those three main characters, the actors, it's challenging for them as well, have to wait for my final decision over the course of 3 months. And once we decided on the cast, and I think for the China part, before we started shooting, I had 1 week of rehearsal with the protagonist Shu and her husband. So for them, I remember you asked me about the intimacy coach or something, because I didn't have any of that. And also sometimes I think it's my job, because that's my only job, to sort of how to make them relax, how to make them trust each other. I have some techniques, I have different techniques I tried, and some of them they work, some of them they don't work. For example, one of the things I always try for intimate scene is, for the actors and actresses to look into each other's eyes for 3 minutes or something like that, because it's more about this emotional intimacy rather than the physical. Because with the physical things you can always act, but with the emotional intimacy, this is the beginning. It's a beginning game we play, look into each other's eyes, and then from then on we'll add more narrative to that. It's all improvised, and we also have some sort of physical training, just to make them realize that we are just two bodies. We are not, and I remember they're like wrestling. I have this wrestling game, on the floor we have this big carpet, and they're just wrestling, trying to like win. Like one person has to win, and they're like spending all their strength. And after this game, they're no longer like afraid of like the physical contact with each other. So I think it's a gradual thing for this 1 week. But for the scenes that requires a lot of emotions, I try not to over rehearse it. Especially some scenes, the first few times are the best. And the actors I work with, they're very hardworking. So sometimes I fear that they will try too hard at home, trying to rehearse the scene in the mirror. And I would just say, like, just do not do anything afterwards. This is like one of the things I keep telling them. Just don't try to put actual work in it, because the more you think, the more you're turning it into something that's, that's predictable, that's not like realistic. So yeah, I think that's one of the technique. And with the European part, because Shu is with Fan, Fan, this actor, he's doing a lot of physical theater. So this is his comfort zone. So for them, it's easier. It's definitely easier compared to the China part, to get to know each other. And I remember, if you remember, there's a monkey scene, the two of them, like, pretend to be monkeys. That's actually one of our exercises to help them loosen up. And I remember when they were doing that, while we rehearsed, I thought, oh, this is really fun. Maybe I could add it into one of the scenes. And then there's one day we had this time. Yeah, we had this scene. We have this like 1 hour. We don't need to shoot, and then we thought, okay, this location looks good, so let's add this scene, and then it's improvised. So I think, yeah, it looks pretty fun.
Yeah, when I watched this scene, I definitely. So if you're listening to the podcast, we're showing a clip of the two actors who are, they're not actors in this scene. They're actually two people in a relationship, being these improv type monkey scenario kind of thing. And it definitely reminded me of acting class. Well, obviously if this guy is a theater director, this is his life, and Shu, the protagonist, that was her getting out of her comfort zone and her playing around. So yeah, you had these actors really doing some unique things on camera, and way to go with getting them there and making it be something that was beautiful and uncomfortable to watch, but also engaging and intriguing. And you're a cinematographer, even capturing things like I'm watching right now, reflection in the window, that kind of thing. So I thought you had what looked like on screen a very high production film. So the high production quality film. So I just kudos to you on that, and I'm really impressed. And I hope that this moves your career forward. I hope that you get some more attention. I think this is it's also cool for me watching a film. There was some English in it, but mostly in Chinese, that you have to really engage and look at those subtitles. And that's something that I think is growing more and more comfortable for American English speaking people, that we can engage in films that are that have international stories and in foreign languages. So I really thought that was cool, and I was glad that you got to come to the States to screen the film. Congratulations on all that stuff.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything, before we do our final Brave faves, is there anything you will do differently next time as a director? You probably learned things along the way that you go, in my next film, I'm going to make sure I do what? Is there something you're going to do differently next time?
Well, I think there are two layers of this question. One is like when it comes to craft, when it comes to, like how to make a film in like a technical way, like is there anything I can do better? Definitely, I learned a lot about, rehearsing with actors, and also like this time when we were shooting, because I love the feeling of improvised things. Although all the dialogue they're written, but on set, I keep asking them to try different feelings, and to be able to capture, both of the actors. I used 2 cameras, which was quite a luxury. But then during the editing progress, I feel like, one camera may also do the trick. So I think when it comes to craft, have small things like this I would like to do differently. But on a more general level, like what would I do moving forward with my career? I think that's a more urgent topic. And also I connected with a lot of filmmakers all over the world through Warsaw Film Festival, through CineQuest. And I think I find myself in a similar sort of challenging situation with everybody. It's like, should I stick to what I wanted to make? And, regardless of what happens, I just keep making it happen. But that requires a lot of courage and a lot of time. And sometimes that you have to face investors, you have to deal with the distribution, how hard this distribution could be, for, let's say, like small budget, lower budget films in this day and age. So yeah, I do have a lot to think about. I still haven't come to a conclusion, but I would definitely keep making the things that I love. That's not something I would compromise, because although it's super hard, I always feel that everything is possible. That's one of my life motto. But after making this film, I feel like I started a company. It's like a startup thing, So sometimes when I approach my investors, I would say that this is a company. But this is something that could last. Like you said, it could last. It's not a company that's, even if it failed, even if we couldn't manage to get all the, investment money back, but still we have something in the end that's meaningful. So that's something I really still wanted to pursue. But when it comes to, for the next film, the finances, I probably would, try something different. But it's always, things are changed, time changes. After COVID, before COVID, the whole world is different. So yeah, that's something I'm still, deciding.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much, Ron, for sharing that and reminding us too, going back to how we started the conversation and how you wrote this into your film. Change, right? The world is changing, our industry is changing, things are going to look radically different than, they look radically different now than they did in 2020 when you made this film. And now we have in Hollywood the strikes, and as we're in our 206th episode, just want to reiterate, BraveMaker stands with the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild on strike for equitable wages and fair treatment of all creative people. It is going to look different in 2024, the distribution model, and I hope for the good, and I hope it ends up putting more money back into the creatives' pocket so that we can keep doing this and more people can have a career, so it doesn't have to feel like we're just freelancers, running around like myself with no insurance. It's like, let's really make this something that's feasible. So kudos to you for To Love Do Us Part. I saw that on your Instagram, it's available on some airplanes. So people who are flying some friendly skies, you can watch this, I believe, on Austrian, British Airways, Emirates, New Zealand, all these different places. So nothing quite in America yet, but be on the lookout for To Love Do Us Part. If you are ever flying abroad, you can watch Ron Lee's film. Great.
Yeah.
And let us end with our end segment that we call Brave Fave.
Brave Faves. TV shows, films, books, songs, technology, clothing, podcast, food, and more. These are a few of our favorite people, places, and things. Brave Faves.
All right, so Brave Faves is where we all choose one favorite thing of the week. And today, I am not choosing a movie or a film. I am choosing a product that I use and that does not pay me to endorse, but maybe they should. So the product is called Mad Rabbit. Mad Rabbit is a salve that is for tattoos. Salve sounds, so arty farty, but it's like lotion. It's like Aquaphor. I used to get Aquaphor all the time when I got my tattoos for the healing, but it smells good. It feels good. It's great for when you first get a tattoo, but it's also good for ongoing care and maintenance of your tattoos. And they say to keep the color vibrant. So if you are an inked up person, check out Mad Rabbit. What do you got, Ron? What's your Brave fave of the week?
Well, after hearing your product, I'm starting to think, actually, I have so many great products in my life that nobody knows. Like, too late.
Here you go. Now's your opportunity.
So yeah, I had it doesn't need to be something recent, right? Like
No, anything. Yeah.
Okay, then I have to recommend my favorite TV show of all time. I think a lot of you also probably in love with that. It's called Succession. Yeah, it's it just had this its finale, I think, this year, and I think it's one of the greatest TV show that's ever made. I use before Succession, The Sopranos was my top, my favorite TV show of all time, but now it's Succession, and I think it's brilliantly written and brilliantly played. Yeah, I don't know if you have, Succession, you're great.
And Succession is up for, I think, 27 Emmy nominations. I could be wrong on that, but I think they got the most Emmy nominations that are now, the Emmy Awards are now moved to January of 2024. But that said, if you have not watched Succession, get on that. The acting, the writing, the cinematography, the editing, the stakes, high. So good in this show. I definitely agree. Right on, Ron. Well, don't go away. Everybody else, thank you so much for participating, watching, listening. I want to say thank you to our live show producer, Amy Cohen, who was quoting during the show here, our intern, Jessica Cohen, who will take clips from this episode and maybe even see some quotes in the future from her, our podcast editor, Barnell Amos from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Carrie Alley, who does our promotions for this live show. Thank you, team, for being a part of this. If you want to join our team, we have spots available. These are people who are creatives, filmmakers, actors, writers, anybody who wants to forward the mission of BraveMaker, which is to educate, entertain, and create community experiences for justice, diversity, and inclusion. You can also become a donor. We need more support and resources. We have 33 people who give anywhere from $5 to $150 a month, and you can be a donor today by going to bravemaker.com/donate, or use your phone. Text the word BraveMaker to 44321. Now check this out. Next week, oh my gosh, we have a really good guest for our 207th episode. His name is, drumroll please, Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez is an Emmy-nominated costume designer. He has been on all sorts of films and TV, and you can catch him currently as the costume designer for Hocus Pocus 2. So we're very excited. I am very excited to have Salvador on the show next week, and he will be on talking about all of the things that he has done. Mindy Kaling is like his go-to muse. So Salvador Perez, costume designer, next week, September 14th. Well, that's our show for today. Ron, where can people find you on the internet? Where do you want them to follow you and connect with you?
I have my personal Instagram account. It's Ranli, RANLI 1220. So yeah, that's my that's my my own Instagram, and also my film, like Till Love Do Us Part. We have our own Instagram. It's called Till Love Do Us Part Film. Exactly. That's please follow us, and I'll keep you updated about our upcoming screenings in different festivals all over the world. And if we get distribution, that'll be wonderful. Yeah.
Congratulations! Very excited for you. You are a beautiful filmmaker. I really think you have a very specific voice. Did great with not only visuals, but engaging and conflicted dialogue. You had a very cool combination of scenes where there was talking and scenes where it was just like showing. So A+, keep going. Excited for you, and I hope we can connect again in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing more film from you as well.
And thanks for watching my film, The Crossing Guard, at CineQuest. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite shorts. Yeah, thank you.
Right on. Thanks. All right, everybody. Goodbye. Please follow Ron, and we'll see you next time. Brave stories change the world, and you are the story. Bye, everybody.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at BraveMaker.org. Like, subscribe, and share. To become a monthly donor, text the word BraveMaker to 44321 or go to bravemaker.com/donate. Thanks for tuning in.